Support for this podcast comes from iTube.net. iTube is optometry's leading source for high-quality optometric videos, educational series, spotlights, and more.
Hey everybody, welcome again to another exciting collaborative corner, the podcast. Still kind of working on the acronym for that, or would it be an anagram, or would it just be a name like the Detachable Kid, TDK? I don't know if anybody ever saw that. I'm looking at our guest here. He's just staring at me like, why did I choose to do this? We're always trying to see how we can collaborate with our profession and people that work in our profession. So our guest today is somebody who has 4 practices over on the East Coast. He has a podcast. He does TikTok videos, big social presence. He's young. He's a family man. It's ridiculous. But we'll get to him in a second. But I am wanting to bring some new exciting stuff that's kind of just got approved. Last, we've been talking a lot about, the Alcon product that just got approved, which is Trip Tier, which is Couturemin, which I think for those of you that haven't listened to this podcast before, this is a dry eye medication. It actually activates the TRPM8 receptor. And, for me, and I know I'm going to throw this at my guest in a couple seconds. So I'm going to save it and I'm going to ask him. But more importantly, what this does is it gives us another player in the dry eye market. It activates the parasympathetic system, which creates that lacrimal function unit, creating a natural tear, which is pretty exciting. Their data is ridiculous. It shows that it really works twice a day throughout the day. I think the only thing probably that patients will have a hard time getting used to is the fact that there's a tingle. There's a sensation, if you shall. Because when you activate the TRPM8 receptor, and did you see the name there? Trip Tier, TRPM8 receptor, those guys over there at Alcon. But what it does is it kind of is like menthol. It kind of gives you that cooling sensation, that kind of creative little kind of tingle. And a lot of patients describe that as a burn. So when you look at that data, just be prepared. Let your patients know it's going to do that. And that's right now, you can actually prescribe that. That is available to be prescribed. You're going to hear it from your reps. But just this past week here, actually, I take that back. At the end of July, we're coming to you in August here. There was a new presbyopia drop, which just was approved. You've heard us talk about aceclidine. And the aceclidine that was being tested was 1.75%. And what that is a muscarinic agonist that actually works to activate the sphincter. Yes, say that 3 or 4 times to your patients. It's going to shrink your sphincter. Okay, I think right now I'm shrinking my sphincter because it's bright in here. Okay, I don't know what you guys are thinking, but by doing that, by kind of being a ciliary body sparing molecule, unlike carbachol or pilocarpine, you don't get that myopic shift. So patients aren't going to be limited by their distance vision. And more importantly, the amount of constriction on the iris was demonstrated to be about less than 1.5 millimeters. We're talking cray small. In their clinical data, they were able to show that upwards of 40% of patients still were able to get greater than 3 lines of improvement in their best corrected distance visual acuity at 10 hours. Yeah, I said that, 10 hours. 70% of patients could actually see 20/40 or better, which is theoretically reading your phone or your computer. So they came out and their drug is called Viz. Yeah, I'll let that sink in for people there a little bit. So I'm coming up with my own kind of marketing. It's going to bring back the Riz, use some Viz. Or I don't know, you can make a whole bunch of plays off of that. But it's a 1.44% aceclidine. And if you're confused about that, it's just basically because it's 1.75, but then when it's diluted down, it comes out to 1.44%. So the FDA said 1.44. So bottom line is, this is going to be coming at you hard and fast. It is a different type of presbyopia drop, but it's also an exciting opportunity for us to add into our armamentarium, if you will. So I'm excited to bring in our guest. This is Dr. Ryan Corte. You're in North Carolina. Did I say that right?
You said it right.
Oh,
the
my
name
Lord.
and the state. Look at you.
North Lake Eye Care?
North Lake Eye.
North Lake
Just North
I.
Lake Eye.
Just North. Is that in North Lake?
So the first location was in a mall and basically an area in Charlotte known as North Lake, and so that's where the name came from.
Very exciting. So it's interesting. So Ryan is being a little humble right now, but he's got a podcast. He's got massive social media. I was going back and trying to look. I don't have any social media, Ryan. So I have no TikTok. I have no Insta. I don't have Twitter. So I don't have X. I've got nothing. So when people say, "Hey, can you publish this on one of your sites?" I go, "Sure, send it over," and then I just don't do anything with it. How first and foremost is how do you keep it all straight, my friend? I mean, how do you do this? And you have two kids, right?
Yeah, I do. Thank you for the introduction, and first and foremost, thanks for having me on. I love that you started the podcast with just dropping some clinical tidbits, things that came into the market that are exciting because it's nice to have tools in our toolbox for dry eye, for presbyopia management, for the whole kit and caboodle of what we do. How do I manage it all? I mean, my wife is tolerant. At times, she's, like right now, it's almost 9 o'clock on the Eastern Standard Time, and she's like, "You got something tonight?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." So, if a shared family calendar is a huge piece to the puzzle, a shared practice calendar, and then I use tools to get things out there. So, I will say, for you not having any social media accounts, kind of a blessing and a curse, right? I think it's a blessing because you get to come home and you get to turn it off, and that's a wonderful thing to have. The curse side is if you wanted to connect to this totally digital world that we're in, above and beyond, then maybe you feel a little FOMO, maybe you don't. I don't think you're the kind of guy that would. But, I utilize certain tools to do so. So, I, recorded the podcast on a platform called Riverside. I go ahead and splice it up and send all that stuff out there via a platform called Buffer. And you basically pay to play, and you know, schedule the content, send it out, and, start engaging those within eye health and vision care, which want to be engaged. That's pretty much my MO. So.
So are you doing this altruistically or are you seeing some sort of an ROI with having, because this is the question I've always wondered is are we just, kind of talking into an echo chamber, putting stuff out there like right now. Like, honestly, Ryan, I mean, we may get two people listening to this. And you know what? And one of those persons was my wife, and she only has to listen to it because I basically say, "Hey, look, my podcast came out." And she's like, "Yay." And then she falls asleep. But do you feel that you see some benefit in doing it to help grow your practice?
100%. I really do, and I think it comes down to when you speak out good, positive things into the echo chambers that we're talking about, into the internet, into the profession, good things come from that. And I've had a lot of colleagues, friends, family members who say, "Hey, I'm subscribed to your podcast. It was next up on what I was listening to, and I tuned in, and I really love the story that's, and they'll refer to somebody who shared a story. I love that podcast episode you talked about your journey into optometry." And, full transparency, the podcast just got started this year. So launched it in January, and things are going really, really well from the perspective of getting information out there to our colleagues. But I'll take another step forward. With 5 practices, I'm always recruiting. I'm always trying to find the right people to join the team, whether it's doctors, whether it's staff, whether it's trying to find a good way to, have an impact in the community. So, outreach efforts. And I'm actually rebranding the practice. You talked about the name North Lake. It'll be rebranded to Reflect Vision Care this fall. And the podcast is called Ryan Reflects. So there's some synergies there, and I want to continue to build out this brand of what we're doing.
Interesting. So is it more along the lines of, you're kind of creating a Dr. Court brand. So Ryan reflects, and then it's so, everything that kind of like comes from it. So it's media, it's, optometric care, it's new technologies. I mean, is that the goal to be something more global, or is what's your goal?
Yeah, the goal is to take the practice to the next level. I had a business partner, and I recently purchased a practice outright, and so I have the ability to make these
Is there
changes.
some juice there? Is there some?
No, no juice. Just time to move on. Time to kind of go our separate ways and move on. And opportunities presented for both of us to do so. And I'll be honest. It the reason I started the podcast is because I did a lot of content development years ago, and I kind of wanted to get my foot back into it. I enjoy speaking, and speaking takes you away from home a lot, and so kind of balancing the art of putting information out there into our profession, connecting with colleagues, and taking the skill set that I have, which I really enjoy, which is talking with our colleagues, and doing so via a podcast, just presented itself to let's give this a try, and it's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, as you know, um, but then taking that brand, because reflect, the word reflect is also, think about it. When you reflect on things, you're thinking about things at a different level, and so we had the opportunity to rebrand and rename the practice Reflect Vision Care. And in doing so, when this happens this fall, let's think about our eye care a little bit differently. Let's be intentional with how we provide eye health and vision care services in our clinic. And so that's kind of my mission and my main objective.
So I also noticed though that you do seem very committed to helping younger optometrists. As a father who has a third year optometric student who pretty much whenever he calls me, I try to pretend I'm too busy to talk to him. I'm going to send him your way. I think that that's pretty exciting. So how would you tell a younger OD who's just coming out, maybe the things you've learned and the things you've garnered to get started to kind of but almost kind of like platforming themselves and their practice, like what things have you learned or what kind of things would you share with people?
Well, Mark, as our profession is very, very, very small, and it doesn't take a lot for you to kind of start to stand out by showing up. I think a lot of our colleagues at times, they get into their practice, they get into their, serving their patients, their life, and maybe they put some of the involvement side of the profession, whether it's speaking, consulting, whether it's advocacy, whether it's getting involved in the community, they put that on the back burner. And so, for your child, for anybody who's in optometry school or a new graduate or looking into the profession, there is so much more to optometry than which is better one or two. And I think if you show up to national, regional, local meetings, if you raise your hand when people are asking for volunteers, if you create a social media account and just start sharing your thoughts on what's going on in optometry and how it's evolving over time, we have a lot that's taking place in our profession. I mean, you just dropped two new, eye care. What was it? You dropped two new eye drops today that just got FDA approved. I mean, things are happening all the time, and it's going to continue to happen at warp speed with artificial intelligence and just how the profession continues to change. And so that's what my recommendation is, and keep a positive mindset, because I think it's a little scary at times when you look at all the changes that are happening in our world and within healthcare. It can be a little bit daunting of where do you get started, or how am I going to continue to make a living or have an impact. So one foot in front of the other, make some goals, set some visions that you can have, big picture visions, and put one foot in front of the other, and keep doing what you're doing, and over time it'll pay off.
I love it. You had posted something which is kind of dear to my heart, which is why you should be going to live meetings. And just listening to you talking about, we hear about AI, and I mean, AI is going to basically enhance what we do. I mean, it's going to sharpen our diagnostic skills. It's going to make us go faster, but it's not going to replace us. And the thing that you had said, and I'd like to hear your opinion, is that where I feel that we kind of are losing that is like virtually kind of hunkered down, not interacting. And so, the lost art of the live meeting, I totally agree with you. And so I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think we have to get together and break bread, shake hands, have an adult beverage, eat a meal, and talk, because there's only so many thoughts, so many ideas, there's only so much connection that can take place via screen. And we're not designed to sit there and look at screens and just have all of our conversations take place via our phones, our laptops, our devices. And me personally, I was actually doing that podcast while I was at a small meeting, a small group of kind of a masterminds meeting with other optometrists. And I had in my heart to just share that. And I think that, of course, these meetings are getting stretched thin, and there's a lot of competition in that space, but you have to show up to in-person meetings, whether it's local, whether it's regional, maybe get to one national meeting a year. It really has an impact on it's invigorating, it's energizing. It really does. It provides a huge impact on how you will evolve and develop as an optometrist, but also you're supporting our profession, you're supporting your colleagues, and you just don't even know what you'll walk away with if you do show up, which is really important.
Wholeheartedly agree with you. And I think really it kind of almost encapsulates what I feel is like your mantra, because when you go to a meeting like that, then you can reflect on why you're doing this. You reflect on the fact that you have peers that are experiencing the same thing, but you also get yourself out of your bubble. And I feel, that we've all just become hunkered down in our own little bubbles, and we don't, go beyond that when you go to a meeting and you're meeting other people. So I I agree. I wish each state would basically say, look, you know what, you can have X number of virtual hours for your CE, but you have to have 10 hours of in-person live CE. And that would be, yeah, we should. All right, we're going to start that. We're
North
going to,
Carolina does. So they actually force 10 a year. Yep. So I think some states, more than others are holding strong to that. But there's a lot of resistance too, because the easy button is to log in and get 2 hours online, right? It's the easy button. And I think that's the challenge we'll run into.
it's funny because it's like, we're on a podcast. You run a podcast. I don't know about you, but the only time I can ever listen to a podcast is when I'm absolutely doing nothing else. So I'll ride my bike in the morning and I put podcasts on. But if I get on a plane and put a podcast on, I get distracted. If I'm sitting there, the TV's on, I get distracted. I forget everything that I've heard. How can people gain any educational, acumen by listening to podcasts when they're not? So don't even get me started. But I want to ask you, going back to your private practice. So we've moved off of North Lake. It's in the dust. We're now Reflect Vision. Did I say it right?
Reflect Vision Care. And we're still North Lake tentatively, but we will
No,
be Reflect
no,
Vision
I've
Care
already
this
told him.
fall.
It's RVC. We're going to do some RVC. So you're in RVC. You seem like you're somebody who really likes to interact with patients. So when you're discussing these new technologies, when you're talking to patients about integrating them into your practice, do you have a specific style? Do you like to over describe? Do you like to talk to me about how, like, let's say, for example, trip tier? How would you introduce this to a patient?
Yeah, it really comes down to digging into their chief complaint, digging into the problems that are elicited throughout the exam. We do a very thorough history. We do a digital intake form. All that information is input into electronic record. I review it. But I feel like the vast majority of great data is thrown at you during the exam, as you're going through and you're having that conversation. And when I transition over into the slit lamp, let's just say the patient had absolutely zero complaints leading into it about ocular surface disease, grittiness, foreign body, any of the symptoms. I will just bring it up again. I'm gonna take a look at the front of your eye here, and I'm just curious, how do you use your eyes throughout the day? Do you ever run into circumstances where they're they feel tired, or they're burning, or they're gritty, or at the end of the day, you feel like they just are always out of focus? Walk me through that, and if they bring up any of those symptoms, immediately I'll kind of double down on that slit lamp. I may go ahead and stay in the cornea and take another look. Um, but I'm going to bring up that information of why I'm evaluating their ocular surface, how I'm seeing it, what I'm seeing, and I kind of talk them through it. And then we have a little bit of a dry eye checklist, and I'll walk them through some of the basics. So talk me through what you're doing, and here are some of my basic recommendations, and here are my next step recommendations. And so I kind of talk them through tiers, environmental changes, and then some of the over the counter and supplements, and some of the baseline treatment options, and then we kind of advance from there. And so I wouldn't just jump straight to that drop. Most likely, I'd see where they're at and meet them at that point. And from there, if I feel like they're engaged and it's a pain point that we're really hitting on, then I'll also schedule a follow up, and we can dive into those details more while instituting some of the baseline treatments at the beginning.
So, all right, I feel like I can just sit here and talk to you for hours on end. We could probably make this part one, part two, part three about things that you're doing now in your practice. What do you feel that sets you aside? Whether it be innovations in contacts, whether it be new technology you're looking at. But talk to me a little bit about your private practice mentality.
Yeah, I really want to make sure that we are honing in on the patient experience. So, our practice is adjacent to a larger corporate retailer, and in doing so, you know, I'm I'm not fully in control of the whole eyeglass component of the sale, right? So I can hone in 100% on the eye health and vision care needs of the patient, including contact lenses. So we definitely make it a huge push to offer contact lenses to anybody who's a candidate. If they're a candidate, they should be offered contact lenses in practice. And in fact, even if they aren't a candidate or we don't know they're a candidate, we still should be offering contact lenses and the digital intake form at check-in during the pre-testing process. And the doctor should ask some kind of question like, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how interested are you in contacts? Because it's funny, I'll have patients come in, they'll tell me they're a 4 out of 10, but they said no to everybody else. And I say, well, why? A multitude of reasons, as you can imagine. Oh, I can't do it because, I can't read up close anymore. I have the stigma, or I was told I wasn't a candidate 20 years ago. Well, things have changed. And actually, yes, I can fit you in a contact lens for astigmatism, or I can fit you in a multifocal contact lens, or, we have a lot of tools in our toolbox. And so I feel like when I'm able to get somebody in contact lenses who didn't even realize they were a candidate, it's like walking into Target, going to get something in the back, and you come back out with something that you didn't even realize you wanted, right? It's an exciting experience for that patient. They leave the clinic being like, I got fit with contact lenses. I didn't even think about this for years. So that's something we love honing in on. We love treatment and management of ocular surface disease and posterior segment disease. So, really honing in on ocular disease is important for our practice as well. My office is in Asheville. We have a huge retiree population, so a lot of ocular disease. And then the offices in Charlotte have a nice mix, and so it's something that we really like to stronghold as well.
It's interesting listening to you talk. I mean, because of the way your practice is situated, independent doctor of optometry, you don't really have like the optical portion. When I first started practicing, we were a cataract refractive surgery center, that we were like a referral center. So we had no optical at all. So you really do get to just focus in on what the disease state, or better yet, just maintaining and being preventative with these patients' ocular health, which is fantastic. So one last question. Okay, so
Sure.
we mentioned the presbyopia drops and such. We've talked about, you know, um, when do you introduce presbyopia drops then? Because that to me would be just a really strong point in your practice, especially in and around context. If and I know you do a lot with the multifocals, but for patients that can't do multifocals.
Yeah, so I'm starting to introduce that conversation again now that we have new tools in our toolbox. I'm excited about these new tools, and so we have patients all the time that come in, they're emetropic, they hit early 40s, and bam, presbyopia hits them like a ton of bricks. They don't want to wear readers all the time, and they're always looking for solutions. And that right there to me is a home run opportunity for us to introduce presbyopia drops, the value proposition, how are they going to utilize their eyes throughout the day. Maybe they don't even want to utilize those drops every single day. They want them for certain periods of time throughout, their busy lives. It just like daily disposable contact lenses. Sometimes patients want to wear them, sometimes they don't, and it gives them the ability to toss them in if they want to go to the beach. Maybe they don't want to wear contact lenses all the time. And so, I personally find that that's when I'm most introducing these new drops that are on the market. That being said, I'm still building it back into my mind, right? Because I think we get into these clinical routines and habits and treatment patterns where I want to continue to dive into successfully having that conversation and getting more patients into it. And so I'm excited to continue to see where these marketing campaigns take these drops and also driving patients into our clinic. I think that that's a huge value for us as optometrists, getting more people in that haven't had their eyes checked and then delivering on that value and introducing new technology.
Awesome. Very awesome. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I feel like, I'm got a lot to reflect on. And I'm excited about your podcast. We'll have to do a little, too bad we can't do like crossover, it would be like collaborative corner reflect, although I feel like we just did. But I'm really excited to have been able to have this little chat with you. And more importantly, listen to how excited you sound, and your positivity really exudes through the airwaves here. I appreciate that.
Mark, thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure.
All right, everybody. This has been Mark reflecting with Ryan. It could be Marc R. I don't know, we'll have to come up with something, but I still like RVC. You should use that for your practice. We will join everybody next time on Collaborative Corner, and thanks for listening. Bye.